Hello and welcome to season 4, episode 15 of The Dive. I am Kobe, joined by Azale and Mark Z. And this episode is brought to you by Honda. Today we are going to get right into our power rankings for summer. First episode to kick it off.
Good.
Yeah, I'm excited to do it, man. And I'm just gonna dress the flag that I'm wearing sunglasses. My eye is messed up. I have an eye infection. It's nasty. Y'all don't want to see it. So this is what we're gonna do.
I wanted a zoomed in camera shot of just your eye for the entire show as you kind of like move around.
That's gonna be a pass from me.
All right, just throwing it out there. Think about it.
All right, so today, the big power ranking episode, Summer Split, is finally upon us, man. It feels like it has been so long since we have had LCS. And the fact that there was no MSI, I think, really is the main reason for that. Yes, there was the midseason cup, but it's just not the same. There wasn't any teams playing there. There's been this massive break, and I really have been kind of craving the beginning of the Summer Split.
Yeah, I think it's so weird without being able to go watch C9 go off to MSI and compete, and like having that month filled with other things while you wait. And it has like a weird knock-on effect where like I think because we don't have that to focus on, we like hyper focus on roster moves, and there's been a lot of drama in the off season that has been blown up. So I think I'm excited to get back into League of Legends.
Yeah, I mean, I really did like, especially watching the LPL, LCK games. But one side effect of not having MSI, we don't have either more or less hype for Cloud9 than, sometimes we have our number one team go off and, we get to finals of MSI and we come back and we're like, oh my God, yeah, they're just going to continue smashing. Or, they just get smashed by the number one teams from all the regions around the world. And then people are all of a sudden questioning like, oh, but how will they do back when they come back to NA and play against our teams? There's no questions this time around. I think we can start off our power rankings by saying that it is an easy answer for rank number one here. Everybody is going to have Cloud9 rank one because they absolutely smashed in spring. And the only, in my opinion, really big mover from spring to summer, of course, has been the Doublelift move. There have been some other smaller moves, but I don't think any of those are going to have big impacts on any of the teams that are actually even going to get close to Cloud9. And I don't think that the Doublelift move is going to benefit TSM enough to be able to take a swipe at the crown.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much to say about C9. Even like some of the stuff you'd be worried about heading from spring to summer, like, the MSI hangover from having to play an extra month and then take your break doesn't even apply here. So I don't see any reason to unseat C9 as the best team in North America.
Yeah, I mean, I think your only real like concerns and maybe in the back of your mind is like, oh, do they get too cocky? Are they not going to try as hard now that they've already won? Like these sort of things. And those are very big like question marks. You can't count on that happening. They performed so incredibly well in spring. I think it's easily, at least in the argument for the most dominant split ever, right, in LCS. Not only did they have an incredible record, they absolutely crushed the competition. They closed games out so fast, and that's why we were so excited for the potential of them going to MSI. So, for me, I want our teams when they go international to be great, right? And I want to be able to see Cloud9 keep up that level because I think that they could have held their own at MSI. I think that they could have been really, exciting playing at that level at this time. So, for me, I am hoping that Cloud9 maintains their really high level and that our other teams are able to level up and compete with them, and we can send some really damn good teams to Worlds because I do think Cloud9 looked great in spring, and I want to see other teams try to match their level.
So a couple things for me. First of all, Cloud9 are cocky. And I don't know. The question for me is, can they even be too cocky? I've talked to them and they're all like, yes, they are very cocky right now. And Licorice gave that interview where he's talking about them trying a lot of really out there stuff in scrims. But the way that they dominated, I expect to continue because, some of the changes from spring to summer and just looking at even the LPL, LCK games, I think it is actually going to continue in Cloud9's strengths
Mhm.
of playing very dominant, helping out the jungler. Blabber, Niski can still do very similar game plans. They showed, even though it was a complete off-roll show match, TSM roster versus Cloud9 roster, they still had the coordination. And in the early game, they had like level 3-4 people going mid. They got their first blood. They pushed on objectives like immediately. And you're like, wait, they're all off rolls. It doesn't matter because they're all going mid anyways. They're in the same spot.
Yeah.
It was just like, even that
Your
little
roles
glimpse
don't matter if your lane doesn't matter.
yeah,
Yeah.
even that little glimpse made me think like, okay, Sven is still going to be a beast in the bottom lane. His Vladimir play was super good. And all the other boxes that we've just been going on about all spring long are still going to be there.
Yeah, even the concern about complacency, like Vulcan and Sven have 1 and 2 in North American ladder. Like they're clearly still, trying pretty hard and putting the effort in. So I have zero concerns about C9.
Yeah, that's why I'm not really worried. You just kind of have to put it out there. That's like the only question mark, right? But cockiness, I think to Kobe's point, only becomes an issue if you stop doing the preparation, right? If you become so cocky that you don't think you have to try hard anymore, that you don't think you have to grind and practice to beat these teams anymore, that's when it becomes an issue. I don't think they're there very clearly, as you say. They're dominating in solo queue. I've heard they're doing really well in scrims. Like when that stops being there and they're not playing games and they're not working hard, then that's when cockiness really becomes an issue because teams will surpass you, right? You have to remember that the reason you got this good is all the work they put in, is the off camp, the boot camp in the off season before spring, Sven and Vulcan going to Korea and spam grinding games. And clearly, they're not doing that in Korea right now because of COVID. You can't travel, but like they are grinding hard in NA and, putting in that same level of work. So Cloud9, I think heavy favorite. We all had them at number 1. They're the dive aggregate at number 1. I think they're going to be, literally everyone's number 1.
Get me out of C9. There's nothing cool to say about them anymore. They're the best.
All right, I was gonna say because I just talked about the Doublelift move, and to me not being that big enough for TSM to challenge Cloud9 for the crown. Azale, you have TSM the highest of all of us at number 2, right below them.
So the dive aggregate actually has FlyQuest and TSM tied at number 2. That is, I had TSM at number 2. Mark had them at 3. Kobe had them at 4. You guys actually both had FlyQuest at 2. I had FlyQuest down in 5. So that is why it is tied. So you guys obviously thought FlyQuest was going to do a lot better than I did. For me, my thought process behind putting TSM so high, my big question mark for them obviously is the jungle role, right? This is where Spica is going to have to be able to play really well, I think, for them to be able to perform, because these other top teams have great junglers. That is the big question mark. But what I do have a tremendous amount of confidence in is kind of like the drive and the hunger that Doublelift is going to have, and I know that Bjergsen has that too. Like, these guys have had a tremendous amount of success in the past. I know that even when Doublelift was on TL, he still had incredibly high opinion of Biofrost. He's always liked him. He's always liked playing with him. I think that bottom lane is going to be incredibly good. And I think that Doublelift is going to be so hungry to prove the doubters wrong. He talked, in Spring Split about realizing like how quickly, you can lose your reputation, how quickly you can lose your respect from the community, from your peers, with, turning in, like a handful of okay games or bad games. Right. And that is something that I think he really, really is going to be setting out to kind of disprove. And, he wants to maintain the crown. Spring Split was really, I think, the first time in a long time that people were talking about Doublelift as anything but the clear best marksman in NA, right? And now everyone says it's Sven. Everyone is going to say the best bottom lane is C9's, and it is until they can, take that throne back. And I just am excited for this because I think that Doublelift at his best is incredible. He has clearly been the best bot laner in the league for many, many, many years. And pretty much wherever he's gone, he's won. So I do think that if that bot lane is as good as I think it's going to be, and I think it's potentially going to be the best in the league, that TSM does then have the ability to really fight at the top of the table.
Oh, I hope I didn't see that interview. I was about to say that's just some selective hearing out of Doublelift. He thinks it was mediocre performances for why any respect left. It was probably more
bad performances. Maybe I'm putting words in his mouth. So for me overall, I didn't think Doublelift was that bad in spring.
Yeah.
I actually didn't. I think he had really bad Senate games. I think he had, a couple real clunkers, but overall, I felt like people were almost having revisionist history talking back on like Doublelift was terrible all spring long. I'm like, no, he wasn't. He was actually pretty good. He just wasn't Doublelift. He wasn't like what you expect out of him, right? He wasn't dominating. I think he was fine for the most part, but it wasn't just, Doublelift the only problem on TL. A lot of the TL players played really poorly. Impact, Core JJ, Doublelift, Broxa was horrible. They were all not playing to their standard. So that was not a Doublelift quote. I like it was more just I had heard him talking about how quickly people like lose respect or opinion changes and stuff on a player, right? And I was more saying I thought he had a mediocre split, not a horrible split.
Okay, yeah.
So to be clear,
either way, back to the power ranking. I think the thing I totally agree about the hunger and the drive, and everyone's excited. There's a lot of big names on this team. Part of me feels like even putting them third is kind of grabbing on to like the former glory versus like
how far removed are we from it? It's like a split gone.
We're
for Doublelift.
Oh, for Doublelift, sure, but for the rest of TSM, it's been forever. Yeah. It was like, they were in the finals in 2019 spring, but they've really struggled to find any sort of consistency with their lineups and their play style. Last split, coaching staff concerns still exist. You've already highlighted the jungle. There's questions about play style. Ever since Broken Blade's been playing, he's been a top lane centric carry, and now you're bringing Doublelift in, who usually is interested in getting a lot of resources. So like, there's a ton of question marks around this team that still are why I have a problem placing them any higher than third. And even then, like if things work out, I think, Azalea, you're right that they can get up to second and take over FlyQuest. I don't think FlyQuest has a lock on that at all. But there's so many question marks around this team that I have a hard time dismissing them all, with, well, Doublelift's going to be really hungry, and he is usually the best.
And to be clear, I had them second, you had them third. So one,
it's
one plays difference. You're like, whoa.
Even third to me feels like for me, it feels like I'm holding on to past glory.
Okay.
Yeah. So this team, I do have a lot of the nostalgia and do respect the skill cap for a lot of the combinations that you can make with this TSM. So I do think that is there for this team, but there are just so many concerns with putting it together. And this is also kind of fueled by a lot of the stuff that I've heard already for what is going on right now. It is not working right now. It has not started working for them, at least already, this early. Of course, they need a lot more time. And some of the things that they needed to change were in-game shot calling and the way that the team operates, transitioning from strong early games through the mid game into actually finishing it out. One of the biggest critiques of TSM, and of course, Doublelift has very strong opinions on that. So this is going to take a long time for it to come together and for it to work. That's why, even though I do have a high ceiling for this team, I'm not putting them that high because these are usually regular split power rankings. And I think that it is definitely going to take time for this team to actually realize these weapons. In addition, I do have pretty big concerns about the jungle position for this team. Not only, the individual player, but also adding Doublelift and this powerhouse for the bottom side can also add more stress, more pressure on this position. That's already going to the most notorious jungle position
Defense against the dark arts.
All of the LCS, maybe in League of Legends. So I definitely do have those concerns. I do think that the moves are positive for them. I've even heard some people that are like, Doublelift coming from his TL performance, replacing Kabe. I think it's for sure positive. My main thing is that it is going to take a lot of time, and I've heard that it's definitely bumpy right now for them coming together. So that's why I actually had more faith in FlyQuest, where you dropped them so far, and I was like, what? Not only were they in the finals, I feel like FlyQuest is my little brother's like best friend that just gets no respect in our friend group, and he's always just like tagging along, and he's even doing well. And we're playing
he's
games.
Dork.
He's second place, and nobody remembers him as second place. They're like, that's just your little brother's friend. And I'm like, yeah, he was in the finals, guys. They're like, what? Power of Evil most damage per minute of anybody in the LCS. He has really retaken his throne as one of these powerhouse mid laners. I think that's a huge identity for FlyQuest. And people forget they didn't even use Solo in the top lane, which was way better for them for almost all of spring.
Yeah.
And they finally figured it out in playoffs, finally by the end, moving it around, that they had like this good configuration. And I really liked Solo's interview that he gave afterwards, by the way, of him talking about wanting to be I think his term was glue man, which is a weird term, but you get what he's talking about, trying to provide the things that the team needs to.
Sounds like a horror movie.
Yeah. Watch out. Glue man, when you play with arts and crafts too much.
At first I was like, what the heck?
Just covered in cardboard paper and glue is coming at you.
I can't get it off me.
It's just dripping.
Coming to theaters near you.
I really liked where he was coming from with that, because that is really what this team has needed. It has needed all these little pieces.
It doesn't really need a glue man, you know. They've got a little popsicle stick, the parts of the body, but they're all just, separate. They need the glue man to bring them together.
We've got our idea for Azale's next cosplay when he loses another bet.
I have the cosplay, by the way. That'll be coming sometime soon. But so my thing with FlyQuest was basically like, well, and I wanted to say this on TSM too, is that I think TSM has issues, but I think everyone below Cloud9 actually has clear issues, right? I don't think that there is any like fully complete roster that there's no kind of question marks, right? When you look at TSM, clearly we talked about some of their issues, the jungle stuff. How's it going to come together as a squad? The TSM pieces haven't had championship success in a while. I also think for FlyQuest, it's like I put them fifth, right? That's one game away from where they were in the regular season in spring. Yes, they did get to the finals in playoffs. They had a good performance there. Will they be better with Solo? That kind of remains to be seen long term. They definitely look better with him, in the playoff stretch. But I will say, like, FlyQuest is also, I thought, a team that felt like while they performed well in playoffs, down the stretch in spring, they were actually regressing, right? They started 7-3, and then they went 3-6 down the stretch. And I felt like teams like 100 Thieves, teams like EG were actually making, large improvements over that course of time. I also did not expect TL to actually repeat the same level of performance that they did. I think that TSM has gotten better, right? So that is kind of more where, not like I'm like, FlyQuest is really bad. I just felt more like some of these other teams around them have been improving and have been kind of, on the moving in an upward trajectory, or made changes that have improved the team. And that is where I just felt like, okay, I could see FlyQuest getting bumped down a little. I still think that they're a strong team. Power of Evil has been great. Santorin was really good. I think Solo has been consistent. The bot lane has been, improving. Ignar and Turtle have been looking pretty good overall. But, this was like a 10-8 roster in spring that finished 3-6 down the split or so. And I think that the league is going to be better around them. I think it's unrealistic to think that TSM and TL are going to play, TL especially is going to play as bad as they did in spring. And your competition is just getting harder, right?
I think one of the things for me is, even though they did drop a little bit during the split, I think that's kind of Kobe's point about Solo coming in, is that was one of the one weaknesses that they really had on their roster was their top lane play. Not that they, didn't have other problems, but that was like the one glaring one, and they should have shored that up with Solo. Now they've had more time to integrate them with him, and on top of that, they're one of the few that doesn't have any holes that I see as glaringly obvious that I think a lot of the teams in their ballpark probably do have. When I look at 100 Thieves, even EG a little bit, I feel like they're the most well-balanced team. And so if one team is going to repeat their spring performance level, I actually do have the most confidence in FlyQuest compared to some of the other people who finish at 10-8, like EG and 100 Thieves. When you talk about TL climbing the standings and doing better, and TSM climbing the standings and doing better, I actually think FlyQuest will be the one that stacks up the best against them, and those other teams will be the ones that drop.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I felt like, for me, maybe I'm focusing too much on it, but I saw more of an improvement from EG and 100 Thieves throughout the spring split, right? It felt like they were getting better. When you look at, Jizuke and on EG at the start of spring, like how bad that looked towards the end when it felt like he was, one of the best carry threats in the league. How much Ryoma and some of those guys, did improve. I still have FlyQuest, like I said, like reasonably high. I still have them as a playoff team in 5th. I guess, well, actually top 8 make playoffs, right, in summer. So pretty much everyone is a playoff team. But
you
I
get a playoff team. You get a playoff team.
I do think FlyQuest, can compete with those upper teams. But clearly, like, you guys have more confidence in them. I just think that TL and TSM, while FlyQuest has less kind of like glaring errors and maybe are the more complete team, I also think that they have a lower ceiling, right? If Doublelift is at his best, and if Jensen is at his best, and these types of players, Core JJ, I just don't think FlyQuest has the individual talent to really match up with TL and TSM if those teams are playing to their potential. Now, whether or not they will is another question. And if FlyQuest, plays kind of like around their level, which I think they're fairly consistent, then they could very easily, pass a lot of those teams in standings.
Sounds like a man who lost all his money betting on stocks, refusing to give up on player peaks and not adapting to a player realities.
Okay, let's not talk about
you lost all your money too, Kobe.
Fair enough.
And I've won the stock game twice.
Let's talk about the bets we make on the dive. The stock market is a different segment. It's not the dive.
True.
No bearing here.
Yeah. Also, I do think, because you guys are memeing on talking about playoff teams or non-playoff teams, with the change to the format, I think we'll probably also change kind of our cutoff bars of like upper bracket teams and lower bracket teams.
You almost have to talk about top 4,
which is, it's going to be more exclusive because, again, it's only top 4 teams, but it means even more then. So I think I actually like where it's headed. Instead of just having this big clump of, oh, you're in playoffs, that's something. Now we'll be like, all right, upper bracket teams is a big deal compared to lower bracket ones. And honestly, I first, when I was making my list, put these teams into clumps. Obviously, you have Cloud9 as the topper there. There's no clump there. It's like this the crown jewel. And then I had 2 other clumps of teams. And I think all of us had, every single one of us, we did have those in the boundaries of these ones. The top clump is very sure, and we're moving them around a bit with FlyQuest, Team Liquid, TSM, EG, and even 100 Thieves. I think we all had them just kind of at that line, cutting off the bottom 4 for us, which were also all the same. So let's just keep on moving down.
So TL was actually right behind in the aggregate power rankings, just below by like
TL4.
Yeah, they were 1 point behind that tie for second. So as much as tie for second and then fourth, they were basically right in there as far as how people had them. Kobe actually had TL in 3rd above TSM. I had TL in 3rd as well. Mark had them a little bit lower in 4th, just below TSM. But I think it's safe to say that no one is expecting the same low level of performance from TL with the amount of talent that they had, with how long they dominated in the region. Clearly, there was a lot of issues going on in TL that culminated in the departure of Doublelift. Obviously internal issues, maybe it's personality clash, maybe it's loss of motivation. There's all these different things. They have now brought on Jad as a coach, which is going to be really interesting. Tactical coming in is kind of, I think, the biggest question mark for people. But I think, at least in my head, I can speak for myself, I can't see them looking as bad as they looked in spring. I just don't think it makes sense with the quality of players that they have and how recently those players have been good. It's not as though you have to look a couple years back to see, Broxa and Core JJ doing well, right? It's like, look back a couple months and these guys were crushing it. So I think even if tactical is not to the level that Doublelift has been in the past, you don't need to have 5 stars on a team. And this is still a team with 4 superstars who, if they are working well together, could be very dominant.
The way I would put it for people who are like, well, how, could they be good? It's like EG got second last split, and Kumo was the top laner, someone who a lot of people had as one of the lower performing top laners, and they were still able to get second. So if your team is playing well, and Kumo did a really good job playing his role and obviously performed much better than people expected, but it wasn't like he was a stud and expected to carry in top lane. That's what people want out of tactical.
C9 won, and Liquors didn't even get Player of the Week. Like, they had to carry. They had this anchor up in the top.
Yeah, you can totally get top 4, top 3, even top 2 with tactical. I don't think that's out of the question at all. And to your point, it's about how the rest of the team comes together and finding a new identity, which I think is the biggest hurdle that they have to face more so than talent or tactical. But like Doublelift was one of the key features of your team for 2 years. He's gone now. What do you do? And that's a lot on the players and also a lot on Jat to find what the new TL style is.
Yeah. Brox actually gave an interview with, I believe, Emily Rand pretty recently about what changes he wanted to make with the difference of Doublelift not being there for Team Liquid. And one of the first things he cited was the team being pigeonholed into being a bottom lane style team and have to play bottom lane centric. He wants it, and he believes that it is progressing to the point where any lane that he gets ahead can carry and finish out the game. So that's interesting to hear. He also, I was pretty interested to hear, he was talking about really wanting to be more aggressive because he was looking back through footage and just kept on thinking, why aren't we fighting here? Why am I not fighting here? Why am I not, in these different skirmish points? And those types of things kind of snowball throughout a split where the team continues to kind of spiral in that direction.
Lose confidence and
So so I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that develops. Plus, add on to this to the fact that I was actually really excited for Tactical. I know there were a lot of memes flying around because he just boom popped into the LCS, Doublelift is sick. Oh, they won! What's going to happen? Something crazy like them not playing Doublelift? Well, it turns out that's exactly what has happened, and I think that he actually played really well. Plus, we've all seen the streams with Core JJ where they have a really good relationship too. So it's not like you're plugging in a super scared, uncomfortable rookie. This is a guy that is very good friends with his lane partner. They already talk a lot and see the game in a very similar way. I think that's one of the most important things for bottom lane duos is to be able to have that, so you don't have to communicate so many of these things vocally. So I don't think that their roster is in shambles. Like a lot of people are like, oh my God, they lost Doublelift. What is the world coming to? Time to jump ship. I think that they will be able to definitely salvage this and do a lot better than spring.
I mean, something I'm looking for is just what was kind of advertised when they got Broxa, right? Was people talked about them getting Broxa so they could play more heavily around this mid jungle duo. Jungle is incredibly strong right now. You talked about a lot of the meta feels like, these power farming junglers. I've watched a lot of the LPL. There's a lot of that. And very often that is about playing through your mid lane. The mid laner then, gets an advantage. The mid laner invades with you, helps you to steal away the enemy raptors. You have priority there. You can get both scuttles, etc., 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 right? And that is kind of like why they got Brox, or at least what the publicly advertised reason was for getting Brox in the first place. So it does give them the ability to really work on that. They're going to have had more time. Brox obviously had his visa issues at the start of spring, so they're going to have had all this time off plus a full split. And I am excited to see kind of the development of Jensen and of Brox as a duo. And as much as you can say you can play through every lane, I mean, everyone says that and wants to say that. I do think that Jensen is the clear star on the team as far as like the carry now. Impact has always played more of that secondary role. He has been great at times on carries, definitely an incredible player. But as far as your bread and butter carry, it's likely going to be Jensen, right? And there's a lot of strong control mages and everything in the meta right now that I think can kind of fill that. And if you're playing heavily through him and you have Tactical playing kind of this like steady scaler, almost look at like how Cody-san has filled roles on his team and been very, very successful. If you can kind of replicate that, TL might have a really good recipe for success.
I want to interject on the power farming junglers because I know so many people in solo queue or people at home just immediately think of their Master Yi jungle only farming and like never ganking and stuff. But the Graves Nidalee power farming junglers are best when they're power farming the opponent's camps, right?
You're in their face.
We're not talking about, it's all about Karthus style, just farming your own stuff safely and ulting. Talking about, farming the map from your enemies and invading them and
all right, Kobe,
stuff.
Keep the meta discussion for later. Keep it under control. We got plenty of time for that. Let's go to the fifth team, huh? EG.
All right, take it away.
EG, yeah. So EG was, a little, kind of like 4 points behind in the additive rankings there. So they were our fifth place team, and obviously EG I do think had less of a strong finish in playoffs, I guess you could say, but they were actually, second place in that three-way tie, but with tiebreakers and stuff. They were second place in spring split in the regular season. They did finish on a very high note in the regular season, obviously have developed very well. I think, especially playing around Jizuke and kind of like finding a balance between allowing him to go aggressive without it being like these really low percentage plays, and with the team kind of like understanding and playing around that, enabling him. And I do think that if EG is to be successful, a lot of it has to be playing through Jizuke again, and also looking to replicate the success they had from Bang, who had been, I think, such a steady presence for the team in spring.
I think for me, EG dropping in the standings is less about them and more about the rest of the league leveling up. Everyone, and I know it's kind of tragic to say, but everyone knows that the level of play from spring split was pretty low outside C9. When your former champion team gets ninth, basically through no fault of their own, then it's obvious that there's something a little weak with going on with the region. And so I think with TL hopefully stepping back up like we're all predicting, TSM making an upgrade, that those people are going to actually battle them for second, third, and fourth now. Whereas before it felt like those teams weren't quite performing. So that's why I think EG is going to struggle a little bit more this split. We saw that when you target Jizuke in playoffs the way FlyQuest did a lot, you can limit his effectiveness quite a bit. And that seemed like a pretty good strategy, and I expect teams will start doing that a little bit more often when they play against them. And they're also just a really streaky team. I think as strong as the back half of their split was, the first half of their split was pretty bad. I know you want to say all that improvement's going to carry over. That's what an optimist would be. It would say, oh, that's improvement, it's going to stay.
But that's not
an optimist.
The glass is half empty.
When you get streaky players like Jizuke and you rip off a bunch of wins towards the end of the season, I am not instantly like, that's going to continue, And so I do have just a little bit of a concern if there's another foot that's going to drop with this team where they'll be this kind of up and down, slightly erratic over the course of the season. So that's why for me, EG is dropped in the standings, and it's not really about them coming apart at the seams or anything.
Yeah. I mean, I really like this team. I think this team is still really strong, and this is one that I could definitely see placing higher than I've put them because of Sven Skaren and Jizuke. I think both of those players actually are similar to kind of what you're talking about, Mark. Where Sven Skaren, he could be an MVP jungler, but he can also have seasons. I mean. Yeah, it's pretty crazy for me to say, but he could be an MVP jungler.
Yeah.
But then everyone also remembers his seasons of like just hard feeding, like getting caught all the time in the river and stuff. So like the stability for this team isn't there. That's part of what I think makes them exciting, and I like it. Like it's coupled with the branding of like the evil geniuses, because they're going to take some of these risks, try and take over the world. But I do have them, definitely above what our basically cutoff line that we've all put 100 Thieves as like separating the top 5 from the bottom 5. And I know during the season, Azale also really
100 Thieves would actually be 6th, right? So that would be
that's why they're our cutoff line, because there is no 5.5.
Yeah.
They're cutting off the.
Well, you're
top
saying
5
top 5. Okay, I thought you meant they were with the top 5. Never mind, doesn't matter. It's definitely the other thing I kind of want to mention here, and while it may not be super relevant for summer, the addition of Huni, and I do think it kind of fits in with that like crazy play style and their kind of brand, their style, and Jizuke and Huni to kind of see that happening. Obviously, for now they can't do it. They do have multiple imports already on the team. And
Jizuke currently.
And as much as it was announced as like he's going to be our top lane coach and academy player, I think everyone kind of can see the writing on the wall that it's like, well, he's a resident next spring, right?
Kumo's keeping his seat hot.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like Kumo is probably going to be replaced unless he makes significant improvements, or Huni makes some big regression or whatever between now and spring. And I do think that I have got to say, just even on a kind of like a team level, I have been pretty excited about EG just because it's like they came in pretty hot with their like, we're going to beat Liquid and we're going to be the best team and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey, okay, yeah, sure.
Beat Liquid, but it's a large jump from there to being
Yeah.
the best team.
Yeah, exactly. They're ninth place. Come on,
place
set your
team.
goals higher. But it was like, everyone kind of comes in with this sort of message, oh, we want to win worlds, blah, 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 and I've just got to say, whether or not Huni is the right move, I do like that they are kind of like swinging for the fences a bit here. And they made some big pickups with Bang and Suke and stuff, and Svenskeren, getting the MVP in spring, and even in between splits, grabbing Huni in preparation for what we assume is next year, I think is kind of cool. And it does feel like they're being pretty aggressive in trying to see, can we find something exciting? Can we find that kind of right combination to truly compete at the top? And that for me, I think is interesting to have in the league, right? Because you do want teams that are truly trying to actually compete at the top.
My only concern, is going to be the potential psychological impact on Kumo.
Totally.
Knowing that they just brought someone on to basically keep in the oven until his residency is good to go, and then they'll take him out.
They're baking up a Huni cake.
He's cooking up. He's getting the last. I don't know. Okay, sorry. They're putting the finishing touches on his 4 years before he's ready to take your spot over, which feels pretty bad probably for Kumo, and I wonder if that has an adverse effect on him in summer and can potentially hurt their chances.
But at the very least, I think it's still a better situation than the ones where it's like someone's brought in as like a sub and then you have to fight for the spot immediately and stuff. Like he still gets, kind of this.
He has the whole split.
Yeah. He has another full split, which essentially is going to be a full year starting on an LCS team to improve and to kind of build your resume and, potentially fight for that starting spot in spring next year, or to build yourself up to a point where even if you don't get that starting spot on EG, that you can maybe earn it somewhere else, right? So I don't think it's as bad of a situation personally, because at least you have time. Whereas, when you look at like the Acadian Greg situation and things like that, for me as a player, that would feel much worse, where it's like, the executioner has the axe over your head and you're just kind of like waiting for you to mess up once and then you're subbed out, right? At least he's got some time.
So about that, have heard that they are even now possibly trying a switch testing for subbing out Kumo. So the axe could be already.
I think not playing Bang is troll.
I think
yes,
definitely.
But they have been trying. Like they've heard that they have been trying this. So
I have too. I just can't believe it.
Yeah, even though I also think that Bang is a huge part of their success, it's like it's up there right now where they could technically sub in Huni and Deathly, for the Kumo Bang duo. That would obviously have a big drawback attached to it, but it's there.
Yeah, I don't expect we'll see it very much, but who knows? Maybe things go south and, some of this volatility that we're talking about isn't working out, and they have at least a switch in the tank that they could potentially try.
That's kind of the situation I see it in. If you start out like 0-5 or something, then I could totally see it, right? But Bang was one of the best marksmen in the league, right? So there is a big drawback there to actually making that swap. But the next team in the power rankings, this is one we actually all agreed on. All of us had them at number 6, 100 Thieves. So, sitting there just a little bit on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still number 1 someday cheerleader, but once it starts getting past that, then it starts to be a little bit more difficult to be 100 Thieves cheerleader.
Man, they got Meteos.
Just go watch some Lane Kingdom and get hyped up for 100 Thieves.
Son.
I always love Meteos. I think he has really good game sense, especially, and brings a strong direction to a team, especially when you have players that the team talked about wanting to build up, like Ryoma, like a mid laner. I think it's good to have a jungler that's a seasoned jungler to try and help build up whenever you're actually looking at trying to build up one of the most important roles of mid lane in the league. And even though, because Ryoma had, such a bad start and he was getting so much flame, when he started to have good games, everyone was really quick to be like, yes, great job, nice improvement. I'm all about that positive reinforcement. You're getting better, good job. But once you get into the upper echelon, and we kind of talked about top 5 teams, bottom 5 teams. The mid laners up there are still head and shoulders above, right? So it does feel a bit dicey, especially with the recent news that they talked about not nerfing mid lane experience and cannon minions until after Worlds Patch. The Bounce team already, they had some plans for it, but it's been postponed. So mid lane is still going to be basically the king right now. I mean, solo lane experience obviously got buffed, and mid lane well positioned to do all of the things that it's done for the last so many seasons of taking over the entire map. So, that's one where 100 Thieves, I'm like, man, it's so hard for me to bump them up with those concerns. Plus, I actually had higher hopes for the Cody Sun performance in spring than we got. Cody Sun and Stunt. I think Stunt had first or second most deaths in the league, and
he's out of position it feels to me like out of position a fair amount, and he has good mechanics, and so like he can make big plays, but there's a lot of times where it just feels like he's not where he should be at all, and he is actually the bigger concern for me even than Ryoma potentially. I think both those, when we're talking about what flaws these teams might have, those are two big question marks, and I was not impressed a ton. And I think while they did have a strong finish to the split, the playoffs did reveal a lot of the problems that they faced. I think they're a good regular split team because I think they have good coaching, good infrastructure. All the players seem more or less pretty positive people who really want to improve and get better. And so I think they have probably one of the best environments in the league, which is great for the a long split as you're going on. So maybe they actually outperform a little bit of my own expectations, but I don't think it'll last.
Yeah. By the way, Stunt had 71 deaths. It's the most in the league by 10 for the next closest person.
Yeah. I mean, I think 100 Thieves was always kind of the roster was always sold to us as like a long-term thing, right? That there's going to be some growing pains, Papa's really talked about that, and that, this is a team that they have a lot of confidence in, to kind of develop out over time. So I do think that, I'm not expecting this team to win the split, right? But I do think that, like, as a 100 Thieves fan, you can be happy as long as it feels like there is more improvement, right? As long as it feels like Ryoma is still getting better, if Stun is getting better, if they're like polishing up some of these rough edges and kind of looking better even individually, then I do think that the future can become fairly bright because they have some really good young players on there. When you look at kind of that bottom half of the map, Ryoma and Stun and Cody Sun and those guys, if they can continue their development throughout the summer split, then and get to a certain level, then all of a sudden, having that big threat in the top lane, of Someday, who was legitimately the only person outside of Cloud9 that was really potentially up for first team all LCS, right? That was the only argument that anyone was making, was that Someday should be maybe first team over Licorice. No one else was even arguing any other position. So this is a really, really good player. But to your point, it fell very flat in playoffs, right? He went up against, I believe, Broken Blade and Licorice, right? Those were the kind of the two guys that they did end up actually facing, and Someday didn't really look that good. He wasn't able to play up to his kind of regular season performance, and whether that was due to jitters or due to the fact that when you have such an obvious threat on a team, when you have like a one threat team, you can prepare your strategy through draft and where you're actually putting your attention and everything around stopping that player, around neutralizing that player. And that is where, if you're 100 Thieves, you need more threats than just Someday. You need the bottom lane to then be able to dominate if people are focusing heavily on top, and you need these things that can kind of swing the match in your favor.
Yeah. So moving on down the roster to Golden Guardians. This is another one that was unanimous for all of us, actually.
Yep.
We had them straight across at 7th. I think there's not too much to say on this team. They made one big move with bringing in DeMonte, and I do think DeMonte is better than Golden Glue. I don't know if it's enough to really move them around too much, because they also don't forget, they had Keith starting last split. They swapped him out, but it's still Huhi, so it's not exactly a traditional starting support. So there is a lot going on with this team that is worth taking into consideration, but I don't see them being significant enough changes to really bump them too much higher. I could see them, taking 100 Thieves spot or maybe EG or so, into fifth if some of these teams that we have above them come up short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's kind of where I'm at too. They obviously were really happy with how they were able to make it in the playoffs, and we had low expectations for them going into the regular season. A lot of people did. They were able to kind of disprove some of that by making it into playoffs, but they also had to get into this multi-way tiebreaker and kind of squeeze into playoffs through that tiebreaker, and then they got slapped down when they actually got to playoffs, right? And that's kind of where I'm sitting at. And if I'm just expecting, some improvement from some of the teams around them, even just TL getting a bit better, then it becomes very, very difficult to maintain that kind of top 6 level. So it's like, we have them as an aggregate 7th. If even just TL improves a little bit, well, guess what? That's where you are from spring, right? You're getting knocked down that kind of one peg. And I do think that it's going to be tough for Golden Guardians to really compete at the top of the table, with these teams if they are playing at their best.
I'm excited to see Demonte back in the league and have Demonte play. And part of the excitement is being fed by talking to Closer and him being so excited, because when I look at Golden Guardians, I do kind of look at Closer and the rest of the team.
Closer and friends.
For me, he's definitely the star. And for him to have all these good things to say about playing with Demonte and him being excited. And we know from the clutch performances, Demonte always had this explosive play style. Is willing to play a lot of these aggressive assassin type champions mid. I'm just excited to see them play. Excited to see what style they come up with, because even though this is not a high powered roster move, Demonte obviously was coming from the academy roster from Dig, and that indicating that Dig themselves, went through their own mid lane tryouts internally and decided, it was fine to trade away Demonte. I'm still excited to see, what this team actually looks like on stage with, the changes that they made, because Golden Guardians, I also felt like were hindered by some of their choices with intentionally going in with a very short-term role swap with Keith and not having a lot of time there, and throughout the split figuring out what they wanted to do with this bottom lane and the rest of the team. It did feel like they were kind of just stumbling through a lot. So curious to see what they'll do with more of a direction. Now, we all have them, again, agreed, like in this spot above the next bit of a clump here, which the next bit of a clump are I had them when I was making my roster or making my power rankings. It's like, all right, it's easily going to be these 3 at the bottom. I'll shift them around or whatever. But these all had big yikes for me.
Big yikes. This is the big yikes tier?
This is the big yikes tier. They were like, there's something for each one of these. So I don't know. Which ones you guys want to start with?
I mean, we can just keep going down. Dig is technically 8th on the aggregate rankings for us.
Well, Dig for me, that
was the nuclear button. They pushed the nuclear option on their roster. The break glass in case of emergency. They smashed the hell out of that glass and get me out.
My problem with Dig is I'm having trouble looking at the Huni for Viper swap as anything but saving money. That is why it's tough for me. And I get that from a business point of view. If it's all been, talked about, Jacob Wolf and all these people talking about the, what was it, like $1.2 million contract from Huni. He was clearly not playing like that caliber of player. That type of contract is like, you're the best in the league and you're crushing it. Right. And that is not the results they were getting from Huni. And that is not the results Dignitas was getting as a squad. But you are bringing in Viper, who looked pretty bad on FlyQuest. Like, he was clearly the worst part of that team, right? And maybe he can really step it up, but it's like, it's been a couple of years, it feels like, of really being hopeful, because he has these incredible pop-off games on Riven. Sometimes he has some really good H-Rock games here and there and stuff, but he's never been able to replicate the same success he has on Riven with consistency on other champions. Like clearly we know he can be good mechanically. Clearly we know that he can pull off these things. That he has the potential to do so, but he seems to be really held back sometimes by decision making and repeating the same mistakes. Like one of the games that really stuck in my head from spring was this Mordekaiser game where he just kept ulting, I think it was Doublelift on Aphelios and losing the 1v1 and just doing it over and over and over and over. And it was like, you're just ramming your head into the wall in the same way every single time. So, I'm kind of concerned by that change for Dignitas.
I mean, they saw, Hooney's Mordekaiser and they were like, oh yeah, let's get something even better. Let's get Vipers.
Yeah, so that's rough, man. And then Dardoch also joining the team. He's now on his 7th team in the LCS. Clearly he has not been able to find much longevity with any of the other rosters. I don't think that you can blame like all of the TSM issues or anything like that on Dardoch. I think he was fine, but for one reason or another, no one seems to want to stick with Dardoch, and I think that whether it's in-game issues, personality issues, whatever, it has been a bit of kind of musical chairs for him, and we'll see if he can kind of like bring something different to Dignitas. But when you look at the pieces surrounding him, it's hard to think that he will have more success on Dignitas than he would have on TSM.
Yeah, I also just feel like it's such a big yikes for Acadian. I thought Acadian was one of the best parts of Dig at the end of the last split when they brought him in. I was like, oh, you know what? He's feeling confident again.
Well, do we know that Acadian isn't starting?
Well, we know at least they're signing Dardoch behind him, and they're very clearly said that Dardoch is at least playing for the spot.
So it's like the great Acadian thing all over again.
They did a 10-man roster thing.
Yeah, we already saw what happens when he had that situation. This is obviously not, every player is different, but that's not a great situation for Acadian to be in. And when we saw him out of that type of situation with the extra pressure of, we're both playing for starting spot every single day, I thought that he had played very well. So I feel kind of bad for all parts of this emergency smash glass situation for Dig, and I'm just like, well, where does it stop here? Because getting rid of the $1 million contracts, millions of dollars of contract is one thing, but where are the shockwaves going to end basically for this?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I put them 9th. It's just every single roster move they did was taking in a player that another team, basically didn't want. And then they're just going to mix it all up in hopes a winning formula pops out. That winning formula very well could pop out, but it just feels really, really bad.
There.
Yeah, not at all.
Let's keep it rolling then. Next to Big Yikes.
Big Yikes number 2.
The Big Yikes that was existing in spring. And to be fair, this is not like a new Big Yikes. This is
one where the fans wanted the smash glass, and the team was like, "Why? We're great."
Mark put them in playoffs though, 8th place. Right there.
Oh crap! You're right. Yeah, playoff bound CLG according to my rankings, 8th place.
So CLG, talk about their bright spot. Pobelter, everybody knows. All right, we're talking about CLG. It's going to be a game intro. What are we talking about? It's going to be Pobelter.
Sticks A on Caitlyn. Can be good.
They added Pobelter, and I've definitely heard a lot of continued good things about the direction that he's bringing to the team, not only within the games, but even from his very brief coaching stint on Team Liquid. Some of the players have talked about on CLG, I've talked about like, okay, so Pobelter is talking about and bringing up things that our coaches, didn't even do or do well previously. So I feel like, yeah, it's that was a huge and great addition for them, but they were unable to kind of build off of that, and people were like looking for the next step to have more faith for summer. But maybe just more time with Pobelter will bump them up. That's why I gave them the tiniest of bumps out of last place, and I've raised them up. All right, more time with this.
I mean, some of this stuff is such a negative spiral that like what happened with Crown just being terrible and eventually just like getting, I don't know if he would quit or got kicked by mid-split, whatever it was, no longer on the roster. Like that is such a death blow to your team's confidence and mentality. Even if you do get like the temporary honeymoon phase with Pobelter coming in, they won a couple games during that window. You've climbed up to like what 3-6 were they at that point or something like that, and then they lost a bunch more, and then it's instantly back out of the playoff hunt again. So like I think coming in with a fresh split, maybe it still feels bad because it's overall the same roster.
It's a new day, Mark.
Yeah, but at
Rise
least it's a
and
little bit newer
shine.
day. Like if I can
A
see
little bit
them
newer.
doing better than they did in the first half of their 2019 split where they're like 1-9. So
Here's my thing though, is that like, I agree with you, Kobe. Everyone wants to go to the pole vaulter thing because it's like the only glimmer of hope on CLG. It's like
I also heard his scrims recently were
had
better.
that Victor game and that sick TP on Syndra,
Rune
right?
does some
Just
good
watch that
things.
one sick TP on Syndra where he kills them and they win the game, and that's the culmination of CLG split. And so he came in, they had one win at that point. They then went 2-3 over the next 5, and people were like, hey, maybe CLG with Pobelter ain't so bad. Then they lost 5 straight games to end the split. It's not as though they only had a couple games with him. They played 10 games with him. They went 2 and 8 with him, right? If you're like averaging that out over the course of the season, you're still dead last by a lot.
That's why I said, it was the weight from starting 0 or 1-7 with Crown, and that's why they couldn't recover. Now it's totally better, and that's why they'll be 8th.
Yeah, that's why I give him the smallest of bumps. Wait till you get to our biggest yikes, Azael. The twist at the end of the
Immortals here, and this is maybe surprising to some people. But I was watching, a source here over on Hotline League who is talking about the fact that Smithy was going to get benched, that he wasn't actually going to be starting. And as soon as I heard that, I'm like, how in God's name is this team going to win a game? If you have Potluck starting over Smithy, I felt like Smithy was the source of most, if not all, of their wins. Aka has, to me, consistently been the worst mid laner in the league by quite a bit. I did think that kind of the way that they got out, they kind of wiggled out some of these wins was like, oh, so as and Smithy are kind of these like smart players, and they have these like weird situations where they win maybe a game that they shouldn't. But usually it was off of like Smithy having some pretty good games and some decent performances from everyone else. But this team had a lot of wins that it didn't look like they should get if you kind of pause the game at a certain point. And I think that when you're taking who was, in my opinion, your best player, benching them for someone who's a relative unknown, unless Potluck just becomes like Blabber 2.0 or something, which I am not seeing, because I have not, again, you're taking a player from, I think it was 9th place academy team, right? It's not even though that they were doing well in academy. You're taking from one of the worst academy teams in the league and putting it on your starting LCS roster, and you're assuming that it's going to be better. Like, I have no idea, unless there's some like crazy personality issues, or like, the coaches aren't agreeing with Smithy, or Smithy doesn't want to play anymore, or who knows what's happening. But if he's benched, I can't see this team being anything but last.
Yeah. I think
you put them not last though.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, true. I put them 9th. I put them 9th. 9th or 10th.
He doesn't even think about CLG. He's like, I can't even see them being anything but last. And it's because, CLG is last, but that doesn't even
Excuse
need to be
me,
said.
yeah. Like basically bottom of the table. But I boomed myself there. I mean, it's just, I just don't see where they're going to pick up their wins.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the speculation I had heard too, was also that this, as we talked about in Holland League, was that it was almost the entire roster was being potentially messed around with solo lanes being a little bit less because of the import rules. So yeah, there's just not much confidence with this team, considering that they busted out towards the end of the last split. And I think that was what people honestly thought that team's level was, that kind of revealed at the last couple of weeks as they fell out of playoffs after being, relatively high in the standings. And like you're saying, with the changes to Smithy potentially not starting, then I don't see why they would, put up any wins. That's why I have them last.
Yeah. So we can't confirm any of these rumors, but Travis put out an interview with Soaz himself, where Soaz says that he can't confirm if he or the previous starting roster are going to be playing. So if Soaz is also saying this, and maybe that, if the Smithy one is true, and you possibly add on top of it the other kind of senior member that people were looking to for game direction or strategy or something along these lines. That is why this is some troubling stuff to hear. It's really unfortunate that none of this is confirmed, and none of this is.
We have to wait for the official starting rosters, which will be Thursday. I think they have to submit them.
So it's unfortunate that that's not for sure, but even just hearing these possibilities is, makes it.
I mean, like if Smithy does start and they play on the entire split or something, I probably wouldn't put them 10th. So this is a little bit up in the air just because we don't have the full information of who's actually starting in 3 days.
But
2 days.
But we know their player roster, right? Like we know the roster is locked already, and that is all public.
It's a big difference between Potluck and Xmithy, though. Yeah. So even though they're both possible,
second winningest player all time in North America in terms of championship, or Potluck might have an influence on how the season goes.
Yep. All right. Well, that is our power rankings. Be sure to let us know what you guys think about that. Maybe give us your power rankings. I'm interested to see what the community power rankings is going to be and kind of how that
they'll give them to you, Azale.
People aren't shy about that. That's true. That's very, very true. All right. The other big thing I really am kind of excited for is the meta, right? It's patch 10.11. That is going to be the LCS patch coming through. So I've been watching a fair bit of LPL. And Wukong has been very popular there. I've been seeing it a lot in solo queue. All of the pros that are streaming are playing Wukong. It's both being picked and banned a lot in LPL, really kind of across the board. It's something that I'm expecting to see a lot of in the top lane. It has a lot of different builds. It's strong into melee matchups. You can do kind of like the Bork Black Cleaver on hit stuff. You can do Triforce Death Dance. And it's not only a strong laner, like where you can have these extended trades with your passive where you're building up regen and becoming more and more difficult to actually burst out. But the team fighting is obviously really strong with the double knock up from the ultimate. You have 2 charges of that now. Your clone can actually knock people up too if you haven't already knocked them up with your main ultimate. So there is a lot of power in the kit, and I think that's something that's going to become incredibly popular. Something that also stood out to me from LPL was the fact that Varus was 100% presence with only bans. So very clearly, people think that Varus is really, really strong right now.
He for sure is. And for the live patch, he's getting a nerf, but we are going to be starting the LCS on 10.11, and he will be in full power. By the way, this is mostly lethality poke Varus, which goes really well in combination with a lot of the other trends of champions. I feel like right now, a theme has emerged. It's not every OP champion, but a lot of them have this very easy to throw out non-committal damage. There's a lot of poke variations. Yuumi is OP. Ezreal is extremely strong right now. The Varus is extremely strong right now.
Syndra.
Exactly. All of these things have some similarities where you can get big picks. You can get big chunks of opponent's health without having to put yourself into a dangerous position. And that is really, really valuable, especially at the highest level of play, and why it's been emerging so many pro leagues, because you can do this before an objective, or there's not a huge cost to throwing out a lot of these, and you can continue to fish for those plays. Then once one of them hits, you get to capitalize on it. And I think that that's one of the things standing out for a lot of the teams. That's not to say that only poke is good right now. Very clearly, and especially in LPL, we've seen a lot of similarities to some of the old things, but all of those champions I think are extremely strong right now and are going to be super high tier in the ban phases. I don't know about you if you want to add on that, Mark, because there's a whole bunch more jungle stuff that I want to dive into.
I was like, where are we going? We going top lane, or are we on AD carry? What are we talking about right now? I think just bouncing back to top lane real quick, it's more or less the same meta in terms of like what you're expected to see, which is a lot of either carries or bruisers. Tanks are still relatively dead aside for Ornn. And so like for teams, you basically expect them to mostly stick with that, and teams should be expected to play on top lane to an extent. Maokai is up there potentially. He is popular and he is strong. We just haven't seen him too much in the LPL, but they are not the region I would expect to break out Maokai first globally. So this could be just underrepresented in some of their games.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought Maokai is pretty strong for a while, actually. Even towards
Mhm.
the end of spring, we were starting to see him pop up more. I do think we are going to continue to see him slotted in where it makes sense. Maokai versus AP especially, I think can be really, really strong. The Sap Magic passive, like you get so tanky through the cell feeling that it can be very, very difficult to actually deal with. But another really big thing that is on the 10-11 patch. Obviously, 10-12 is coming out on live. The 10-11 patch was kind of the marksman buffs, right? All of these marksmen were getting more health per level, more base health. Zeal, all the Zeal items got additional movement speed added to it. The marksmen that kind of fit in solo lane as well as bot lane, like Kalista, Tristana, I think it was also Vayne and Lucian, all got buffs outside of just the flat HP buff. They got kind of smaller buffs because there was concerns that they would just start to dominate in solo lanes too much. But obviously, they're trying to bring more power back to the marksman role, allowing them to have a little bit more ability to kind of survive through some of this burst with some of the stacking HP. So I do think that will have some effect. But it's one of those things that it's kind of more hidden. It's hard to really like feel the power as much with just a little bit of health, but base health and scaling health buffs can actually make a really big difference as far as win rates.
Yeah.
What else can we talk about before we get to jungle, just to tease Kobe some more?
We could talk about individual OP combinations, because I know people love that and they just want to listen to something. What can I abuse? Because I've got a bunch.
Kalista set. That's my favorite one, easily. I think
the Omnistone set.
Yeah, just the idea of whipping someone into the team, knocking them up, and then like comboing it with a pile driver back into your team feels to me like exactly a wrestling move that would exist. So one, it's strong, and two, it's thematically dope as hell.
If you want to play support set, you should go Omnistone. I've been seeing the most success with that, and a lot of people are playing Omnistone specifically because of how it's AI, or whatever you want to call it, actually decides when you get Predator. Now you get Predator so often off of recalls and coming out of the base, so I'm seeing so many Omnistone sets now where they're rushing Swifty Boots, going into Deadman's, and they just base, and they come out of base so frequently with Predator, and they just zoom down a lane at 100,000 miles an hour and are lane ganking people and stuff. It's really, really annoying to actually deal with. It's also quite fun to play. So definitely recommend trying that out, with the Swifty Boots, Predator, Deadman type setup using Omnistone. He can be pretty powerful, and the Omnistone actually works fairly well as long as you have, say, a melee support or someone that you can actually trade into in lane too.
Yeah, another option for set that's really popular is Phase Rush. Phase Rush right now
support, though,
is extremely good,
lane, right?
For a solo lane or jungle.
Yeah.
Jungle set is still very viable, and it's Phase Rush is just, if you have a champion that can incorporate it, because they buffed it consecutively over 2 patches. It was actually quite a while ago, but people didn't really fully embrace it because everyone always thinks, I need a damage keystone. If I don't have my Electrocute or Conquer or Dark Harvest or something, then I'm missing out and I wouldn't be able to kill this guy. But mobility is so good. Plus, it's really easy to proc now. And not removing slows and stuff on you is so good. That's why it's by far and away, if you are still running Fleet Footwork on Graves or something like that, and you have not embraced the Phase Rush revolution, then you are losing out. And you're easily going to gain LP if you switch over to Phase Rush. Because if you have a champion that can incorporate it, like Graves or something like that, and can bully you, it's just so much extra chase down power and escape power, which is something that people really underestimate. For a lot of champions that do commit, and getting off your proc is very easy to do. It can allow you to turn a champion that is normally thought of as a one-way ticket, engage only, to having complete safety.
One thing I will caution against for top lane, if you're going to go Phase Rush on set, make sure it's in a matchup where they need to be kiting you, right? Or it's like you're trying to chase them down. Because if you're going like Phase Rush into like Aatrox server and you're just sitting there and slapping each other and they have Conquer, it doesn't work out so well for you. But it can be really good, especially into things like, if you're playing against like a Jace or whatever, like you're talking about, if you can get them with the clap and proc that phase rush, he can't really kite you. You can chase him down and beat him down, and it can be, really strong in those types of matchups, which is pretty cool.
Spoiler: all the Jaces are going to run phase rush now too. So this is kind of
then you get Deadmans and Swifties. It's battle of the speed.
This is the arms race. I've been seeing, just everybody's trying phase rush on whatever is your champion. If you feel like you can incorporate it, there are a lot of good uses for it. Moving on to more OP stuff though, I have some like specific combinations. What's taken over the tank Senna? Have you guys seen the Grasp Frozen Mallet tanky Senna? Yeah. It's so annoying and so ridiculously good, because even though they keep nerfing her and they did another little hit to her soul generation, she can easily get grasps all the time in her trades in lane while she's still trying to chalk those up, and she becomes incredibly tanky. Then you still get the slow when you build your Frozen Mallets later with her, and performs the same way, with giving you that big benefit of allowing your support to be a super fed, juiced up support, and people are still running all variations of whatever. Supports can also be damage dealers, even because they're getting so much extra income.
Yeah, it's like using Glacial Augment, and it's just having it as an item instead in a more powerful version, so you can keep training people down or kiting.
I will say with those types of builds, you got to make sure you're doing it against a team that you can actually be consistently autoing against the whole time. Like if you're against like a melee support and you can be constantly proccing and grasp and stacking it up and everything the whole time, and you can be kind of kiting them out, that's really useful. I have also seen people doing that build though, where they just end up, Frozen Mallet is expensive, right? And they're not doing so hot, and they're sitting on like a Giants belt and like 0-6, and it's like, it looks pretty bad when it goes bad, but I think it can be strong if it's appropriate, if it makes sense for the situation. And
it's taken over in pro play. It's pretty much all that now. And then obviously the Black Cleaver later too even helps with some of those problems. You get your armor shred and you get your extra move speed too.
Yeah, definitely really strong. And another thing that we can talk about a little bit is Volibear. But this is not the buffed Volibear that's actually on 10-12. So I think we're going to see none of it in pro. I don't know how much you've played it, Kobe. I messed around with a couple games and I was like, I'm going to wait for the buffs.
So the hot fixes were nice. I did feel the hot fix difference. And I don't have to wait any longer for the buffs because I play on live, right? Yep. So we're in there for live. And I think with live, I think it's definitely super strong. I think people are really going to underestimate it right now. One of the things is that so much of your power is your ultimate. Your ultimate is absolutely insane. The difference between good Volibears and your 38% win rate or so Volibears is going to be active use of your ultimate. Basically, with this champion, it's very simple. It's not like the old Volibear. You need to go to whatever lane is winning, can help push in for a tower dive. Your tower dives are insane. Your ult does so much damage. It turns the towers off for an extra second now, was the last buff, from 2 seconds up to 3 seconds, even at level 1. So what you do is you just go pressure any lane that you already have an advantage in. Volibear is extremely good at brawling early, so you just bring more advantages to that, and you completely remove the tower. So it's just been really easy for me to snowball when I'm queuing with a bunch of. I usually queue with a lot of friends for like flex queue and stuff. It's just so fun when and you have good communication with your lane that's going to be pushing up. As long as you time that right with your minion wave, I think Volibear will. With the buffs rise up from literally the lowest win rate jungle in the entire game and kind of dumpster fire where he was released at.
I mean, he's gone up like going on like 20% win rate. From when he first came out, he was sitting like 34 or something. He's now at 53, right? With the hotfix buffs, with people learning him, with the 10-12 buffs. The other big thing about the ultimate is it's like even once it turns back on, you get a bunch of bonus HP. So you're kind of like, Renekton, where you can actually tank some more of those early shots even before you have a lot of health built up. So it is pretty powerful. I do think that, it's so well suited for those tower dives. It's very easy, like as the turret is turning back on, to have your E dropping for the bonus shield there. You have your ultimate for the 500 HP. You have all these ways to actually then, tank up the turret and allow even an extended tower dive to actually make things happen. So he is pretty interesting, but don't think we're going to see him until the next patch comes out. I've got to say, like, when I played him at the start before any hotfixes or anything, like he felt really weak, but at least he seemed cool still. So I'm kind of happy that net, like, because he was one of those champions that I'm like, okay, this is like fixable, right? You just need to change the numbers and he'll be fun. And now I feel like he's kind of getting to that point, which is pretty cool because I do like the ultimate, even just outside of tower dives, just to be able to like just jump into the backline and stuff. Yeah, like you get really tanky. And
go ahead, Mark.
My concern with some of this is like the numbers, if they become too good, he does feel like one of those run the game over-esque champions to me. With some
he's
of that
like a Garen, right?
He runs straight at you, and it's basically a bit of a stat check. Like, do you have the tools to slow him down, and then can you kill him? But he has the gap closing ult, which I think makes him a little bit more annoying than things that traditionally fill that role a little bit, like, I don't know, Garen, Darius, Olaf, these kinds of things that you just kind of run at you, which if he starts getting fed, he seems like he's going to be pretty obnoxious to deal with in pro play with the coordination of the tower dives that Kobe's talking about and stuff like that. We'll have to see because, like you said, people still learning him and stuff, but it was one of those things where as I was watching him be used by good players, I was like, this looks really obnoxious and like a little hard to deal with.
So you know how they talk about when they're creating a champion, they have a certain amount of power that they can allocate to different areas of the kit. This is to me the one when I was playing it, I was just like really underwhelmed with before I hit level 6, and I was like, oh, okay, it's like, yeah, I can like shoot my E. It's kind of ranged out, but I really want to be in it for the shield, and I get this. Okay, I stun them instead of flipping them. I feel like almost all this new power budget was all put into the ultimate. Your ultimate is pretty much everything to me with this champion when you're playing it, because not only is it the added mobility, it's what changes him from old Volibear because you have this extra gap closer, but it also turns off towers for a super long time, also gives him so much more combat power. So that's my fear, is that has turned Volibear into just this
one button wonder,
this completely ult-centric champion.
I mean, even his E is like empowered by his ult with the max health bonus that you get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
it can be tough, but I also like always do feel like with champions that are like this, unless they're absurdly strong, they're not nearly as strong in pro generally. Like the Garens and the Dariuses and the even previously, old Volibear had a higher win rate than this. He was sitting at like 54 forever. But those champions are dealt with more easily at the really high elos, and especially in pro play where people are better at kiting, people are better at disengaging, people are better at dealing with this. I don't know if the exact same things will apply with Volibear, because the ultimate is atypical from your regular Juggernaut, where they just kind of have to keep walking at you, and like Morgana or whatever just totally stops that, because Volibear can just jump his ass in there.
Yeah, so exactly. Like that's the difference.
That is the difference, right? And so that's
he has utility.
Yeah, so that's why I'm wondering, like, if it is going to be that champion that kind of bridges the gap and is a little bit different. But at the same time, if it is just this one button you have to play around, and you can disengage with like a Trundle Pillar or a whatever when he ults in, then maybe he's still not going to be as strong. Like, I'm not really sure, because once he's in there, he still only has like the 1 second stun on his Qs. So we can't necessarily hold you in place and force you to fight as much as some of these other champions.
All right, I've got another OP combination for people, and this one actually is one specific combination that's popping up more in pro, but is just the item itself is also OP, and it doesn't have to be just an Ezreal thing. But the Death Dance that people started building on Ezreal now opened more people's eyes to how good Death Dance as an item is, after the change to the build path, where it now builds out of the Aegis and gives you armor and magic resistance, and they changed the stats on it. This item is so incredibly good. I've been spamming it on any of my snowball junglers, Rek'Sai, Olaf. They are amazing with this. It's even better. These are champions that would previously rush into Guardian Angel, which, okay, yeah, it gives you the armor and you get the revive, but you pop. It's, to me now, is just better in all scenarios. And especially if I'm on a champion that does get early kills like Rek'Sai, Olaf, getting these early leads, it just allows you to run off the entire map with this snowball. And the fact that pros have been building it on Ezreal all the time as well, with the leech basically being universal and being able to get it off all these damage types now. It just feels like it has so many applications. I honestly would not be surprised if down the line they pull back a little bit on this item, because I feel like right now, especially if you're in solo queue and you're looking to carry, if you get any sort of lead, you should definitely build this
People
item.
just start drain tanking you like crazy if they're ahead with Death Dance. And one of the things that I think makes it feel so good on marksman, and I've been trying it on some other marksmen too, not just Ezreal, is that one of the things I always felt really bad about is, say there is a lethality stacker and someone has spell pen, right? You're fighting against like the regular LeBlanc.
Which one do I build?
Exactly. It's like, do you get the Hex Drinker? Do you get the PD and try to not get like one shot and hope that saves you? Like how are you supposed to itemize here to not get one shot, right? And Death Dance really does feel so incredibly efficient. Even games where it's like, it doesn't have to be as extreme. It can be like a Syndra mid who's going to have spell pen and they have a Jace with some lethality in the top lane or whatever. Well, the Aegis becomes so incredibly effective because that flat penetration, is moving you to near true damage levels at times, right? And they're getting so much added damage because of that. So even just the Aegis as a component itself is going to give you so much survivability and kind of like erase a lot of that flat pen that people are building up. So it can be really, really nice. And it's fairly easy to build into now. Like you can get, a bunch of long swords and some resistances and even just like sit on a null if you need some early magic resist and these types of things. So definitely agree. It's really, really strong pretty much across the map.
One of the things you made the wrong point on is those that feels good on marksman, because nothing feels good on marksman. If you hadn't heard, they are again complaining. The marksman players.
Marksmen are always complaining.
I know this is the newest wave, so I don't know.
Yes, they are always complaining, and their experience did get nerfed. So
yeah,
I there's always a gray area, and I do agree with you, about the complaints, but I also recognize the experience changes definitely did.
Level discrepancies are frustrating
because I feel it as a jungler. And we've gone through ups and downs as well. And I'm like, all right, I feel a lot better about ganking bottom lane in the current state.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I will try and get a solo laner ahead because they can also carry really hard, with the solo lane experience and everything. But the bottom lane qualms about the experience.
It feels bad if you feel like you're laning well and you look up and the mid laner's 3 levels above you or whatever, right? Or 4 levels above you or something, like that. I get that. And I also know that there was like, I saw this clip. I don't know all the context to it, but a lot of people were complaining about like Kassadin killing Sneaky or whatever. And Sneaky's like 15-1 on Jhin or something. But at the same time, it's like you have no MR. You're playing against this champion that has like, his stacking
full combos you
and full combos you. And that's just kind of the way some of those champions work. At the same time, obviously there are situations in which marksmen are incredibly strong, and the other thing that I think people often overlook is that marksmen become more and more powerful with the other pieces around them. The more defense you have for the marksman, the more support you have for the marksman, it amplifies their power incredibly high, right? They become better and better in those types of situations. Like the Jhin is maybe pretty strong alone, but the Jhin with like a Lulu speeding him up and shielding him and like someone peeling for him and all these types of things, like they have such consistent high damage, right? And obviously there are frustrations with marksmen, there are issues with marksmen, but like using like a cherry pick clip like that as an example never really works for me, because I play a lot of Vayne, and you could just take clips of me on Vayne, insta killing 4,000 HP armor stacking tanks, right? And like that feels pretty bad for them. I know it does. I just need a Rage Blade and a Bork, and it doesn't matter. You can have 6 defensive items. You're getting
limited attack speed marksman versus assassin in a 3-second window is never going to be a fair representation of what those champions are designed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think that they need a little something there with the all the changes that I've gotten to experience. It's funny, actually, though, that you specifically pull up the clip and mention Kassadin, because that champion, everyone's always has their eyes on level 16, and with the changes to solo lane experience, it is quicker for Kassadins to get to level 16, and that is a champion that I am expecting to be in pro play when we come back as a counter pick for sure. I think that the window to try and abuse Kassadins before they get to this point, and it's super low cooldown, by the way, and your ultimate is one of the main things why everyone's always looking at level 16, your rank 3 ultimate, obviously. But I think that he's going to be one of the big ones that does emerge, especially as we look more and more closely at pick and ban phase. It's going to be really interesting about hiding these counter picks, and flex picks are going to be very important at the beginning of summer.
Yeah. I mean, the rub on Caston's always the same thing about like his early game. You can get to 16 faster, but is he any better at surviving until then? Even if it is 2 minutes earlier or something, is still a concern, especially with some of the jungle stuff and how strong and invade heavy they are. If you have a mid laner who's functionally useless pre-6 in terms of collapsing and helping in those kinds of situations.
And wave clear is non-existent.
Yeah, and your wave clear is non-existent. It feels like if I'm like the Graves Trundle matchup, which is a very popular one right now, like that would just feel miserable if I had Caston not to help or anything like that. Now, obviously, you probably shouldn't pair those two together, which you can say is a draft mess up, but it is one of those things which is why there's more limitations on drafting the Caston than there are for a lot of champions.
Yeah, even if they can't abuse you in the 1v1, almost everything can push on Kassadin, then grip up with their jungler and get in your face, try to counter jungle the jungler, and maybe take him out of the game that way. So it is situational, but I do agree Kassadin can be really, really strong. Other thing I've been seeing a lot of and think is super strong in solo queue right now, at least, is Fiddle. Fiddlesticks seems really, really good. He has gotten a lot of buffs. It feels like
I've been spamming him, and they already nerfed him. The nerf was really small, so I'm like, okay, good. That's enough of the nerfs, right? That's all. Because they only nerfed his damage to lane minions by 10%, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna keep
that'll do
it.
it. That's good. I mean, he seems so strong
effigy,
now, man. Like the effigy as a sweeper, like even just early game vision control, some of the things that I think is really like strong about him seems like it should be transferable to pro. It's so easy to start with a pink, to drop an effigy in one pixel brush, to drop a pink in the other, or two pinks if you want to start. But I'm just talking about like having one down and one effigy at the start of the game. Allows you to have vision like by both scuttles early on, right? This is something that alone is really powerful. Your W is actually so strong now to the point where if I'm having a good game on Fiddle, I feel like I am actually just standing there and tanking their damage and out healing it. Like it can be really, really nasty. The ultimate is obviously very, very strong. I do think that he has gotten to a point where I would be really excited to see him played. In the past, when Fiddlesticks has been strong, like the old Fiddle, we never really saw him much besides, it was a Zingy,
Definitely.
I want to say.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the support Fiddle. We saw a fair amount of...
no, I'm talking about Jungle Fiddle.
Oh, okay. I was going to say support Fiddle with
support Fiddle we did see
nuts.
some. Yeah. Like, but I'm thinking Zingy was like Karthus Fiddle player, if I'm recalling correctly, right? That was like way back in the day. But that's like the last time I can remember seeing like actual jungle Fiddle. So I'm hoping we're going to see him some. I think he is a really cool champion. I do think that vision control is so important on this champion, and it always has been, to be able to, ult from surprising angles. And the effigies, like having a sweeper on them, allows you the ability to set yourself up for these ultimates much more frequently, right? Like when you're walking around with pinks, you can pink one area, you can effigy another area, and make sure that they don't know where you are to come from these angles that may surprise them. And I think it really kind of changes the game anytime he's in it.
So actually playing it, I do a lot of times wish that I could have a normal sweeper to walk through a long area.
That's true. Yeah.
But as long as you are buying your pink wards, and after level 6, your effigy wards will sweep as well in your area, and you can coordinate with your team. I haven't had any problems still controlling vision, but I have had to communicate a lot more with solo queue. Is definitely more difficult than pro play. But I also start to think of pro play maybe getting a lot better at avoiding Fiddlesticks ultimates, because that is one of the worst feelings, is getting to an area you think has no vision for sure and ulting and them backing up just in time, spamming you with emotes as your ult gets nothing and making you look like a fool. Like that can happen all of the time. Some quick things I just want to run down, because I am going to do like a Fiddlesticks segment. You can double leash most of the camps, red plus raptors, wolves plus blue into blue plus gromp. You can do them at the same time, getting them close at the sweet spot to use your W and drain both of them at once. Greatly increases your clear time. Plus, a big part of playing Fiddle now is also making use of the passive thing, where you can get your fear simply by getting ulting the people out of vision, so that the reaction time is even less than less than your Q. That has been a huge one in one-shotting people. So I just feel like there are so many options. And with the buffs to Predator coming up on the next patch, I'm actually going to switch over to Predator since live right now, it has the super low cooldown. All right, now on to Twitter questions. Well, first one we have in here. This one looks like it's just at Mark. This is one.
Fantastic.
Cam Edgecombe says at Mark Z, who would be the better head coach?
Yeah, who would be the better head coach, Mark?
Kobe or Zale?
Head coach.
Did you guys look for any other of the Twitter questions, by the way? Because we didn't put any other ones in here. I can just go.
I wasn't looking. You can look while I deliberate.
All right, me and Zale can find some while you answer.
I feel like I would expect maybe Zale to be the better head coach.
That's a good answer.
I feel like Kobe would be maybe a better strategic coach.
Okay.
Kobe's a very friendly, affable guy. He's great to hang out with. Has a lot of great ideas about the game.
Like analyzing a game with your friend on the couch.
Yeah. Yeah, he'd be such a great strategic coach, jungle position coach even, really helping elevate you to the next level. But I feel like Zale with the bald head just exudes authority. And everyone will listen and just be like, yeah, I guess I'll do what he says. And so
I would honestly, the sunglasses right now is pretty perfect for it too.
Yeah, like if this guy was standing in front of a
hitman going on,
he's standing in front of a room telling you what to do. Are you going to be like, no?
Yeah, I mean, I would have a clipboard for sure too. That's the first thing any head coach needs is a clipboard, right? Like, just
get the whole doctor's outfit.
You don't even have to be writing. Anytime someone says something to me, I'll just like, start.
Take a note. They'll assume the worst.
Yeah. Like, oh no, I've got to listen to him. He's gonna write something bad. Good answer, Mark. I like it.
Thank you. Did you find another question, or did I not give you enough time?
I'll just go with the one I'm looking at right now. And as I can try and find the last one. This one is from Devin ZXZ. How do you think the meta has changed from the end of spring to the start of summer patch? Does this change the weighting of some of the teams based on their expected play styles? One thing I was going to list in there, the patch section was just all of the junglers that people have been playing for when I've been talking to the pro players for their scrim metas and stuff. And there's been a couple of camps where the Graves, the Nidalee, the Kindred style, that super heavy and Olaf, these power farmers that aggressively power farm your enemies' camps and invade them and harass them, and you try and coordinate your entire team around controlling the jungle that we did see emerge a lot with the LPL LCK thing, and people have been playing a lot of. That is super big. Also, the Trundle Olaf kind of trade that's been going on has been super big, but there have even been some people still playing the gank junglers, Gragas Elise. So I still feel like there are options, but with a lot more of it trending towards jungle centric. You are Graves or something like that can power farms, can also scale up well, and is going to be about playing with your jungler and invading and controlling a lot of these objectives. That's why one of the reasons why we all kept Cloud9 way up at the top, where people are like, oh, is it going to turn into a Sejuani meta for Blabber? No, it is not. So
I think overall, though, I think those changes, even if the ganking options are still there, there's still not that many tanks outside Trundle and maybe Jarvan that you can probably play. So I don't think if you wanted to have a team oriented jungler, it's very easy to pull off in the current meta. Combined with a lot of the most prominent bot lane picks, there's just not that many tanky champions in the game right now. Tanks are not prevalent in the top lane. You see a lot of Thresh, Karma, tank Senna, I guess you could say, but that's not really
not a true tank at all.
So Yumi's really prevalent as well. So I think this is actually going to be a really volatile heavy kill meta, which is why we were talking about those pick champions being really good when there's not this fat meatball in front absorbing all your hits and stuff like that.
All right. I found another question here. I may butcher this name. I'm not sure if it's Reslived or Reslived or anyway. But at Reslived says, of the 4 teams that missed playoffs, 2 have announced no roster changes. Is it irresponsible for management to believe that their team can turn it around when they were bottom of the table? Or is it worth it to invest and show faith in the team that you constructed during the offseason?
So go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say option C, which is hard to make changes in between spring and summer, especially when there's a global pandemic going on. So like that's honestly, I think the biggest hang up. It's always hard between splits to make big moves, big splashy moves, because everyone who's good and on a good team is going to be happy there. And people aren't going to be ecstatic to join a team that was struggling. So it's normally difficult, and like you can't even get some people now.
Exactly. I mean, visas right now are basically impossible to get. There's travel is just ridiculous right now, so it's incredibly difficult. Plus, as we touched on in the beginning when we were doing power rankings, some of the teams also trying to shed big contracts. Money is another big issue that goes in the decision-making process. So for the teams that were at the bottom of the standings, did not make a lot of changes or didn't make any changes at all, I first go to those reasons. I'm like, okay, money and availability, both difficult right now. You might say, okay, so then before spring they should have done better scouting and got
had academy players they want to use or something,
that type of stuff. But yeah.
And I do like the question though, but it would probably be a better question to come back to, at the end of the year, right? Like if it's between summer and spring next year, then you have a big opportunity to change the roster. And then I think that's, a question that really hits home. I do agree that almost like in principle though, the same thing applies. Like I do think if you're not trying anything, there may be very limited options, but you should at least be exploring those options. If you're sitting at, bottom of the gutter, you should be trying to think, what could we do? Is there anything we can make work? Sometimes, to your guys' point, there's just nothing that can happen because people under contract, you can't get visas. Those issues may be blockers, but I do think that the teams owe it to themselves and to the fans to at least explore the options and to see, hey, is there anything out there? Could we do something to make our team better? Kabe, for one, guess what? He's leaving the LCS. No one grabbed him up, right? Maybe that could have been an improvement for our team. There are pieces that are flying around. They're just are limited pieces.
I mean, Dignitas is a good example. Like, as much as we were kind of saying, oh, their moves don't seem splashy or whatever, they made a bunch of moves. Other teams could have made moves to just try and figure out that winning formula, but they didn't. They're just fine to sit on what seems to be a losing one.
All right, there's another one that a couple people were asking here, and I think it's kind of follow up to the coaching question. So if you guys had to coach a team, which team would you want to coach? If you could be the head coach of any team,
easy,
which
Cloud9.
LCS?
Cloud9? Yeah. Or I mean, you could say outside of LCS too if you want.
I don't think I want to move out of the United States. Cloud9 has a lot of responsibilities, Kobe. What if you're the guy who messes it up?
What? How am I going to mess that up? Also,
I don't know, dude. You mess everything up.
I would rather just be winning and have the possibility of messing it up than have to build from the ground up, nothing and just start out with losing. Are you kidding me? This is for sure a no-brainer for me. I also think it would be really easy. I don't think that it would be easy to mess up for me in any way because all of those players are so easy to talk to. Have you ever talked to like Licorice or Blabber about matchups or anything like that?
They're good at nodding along like, yeah, Kobe,
Yeah, sure, Dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just feel like that is a dream.
So I would say the variation on my answer, if it's like for Summer Split and you have no control over rosters or anything, then yeah, I think it's just Cloud9 is the easy answer because they're so good, right? But I do think there is a certain like excitement or interest to being able to have a lot of input into the creation of a team, the creation of a roster, to create a direction and type of players that you want to play with. And it's like, if you get like carte blanche to actually just like make a team and you have the money to get the good players and all this sort of stuff.
I make Cloud9.
Okay, well, then I think it's pretty cool, right? So I do think there's some excitement to being like, as long as there is good support, to starting on a team that's near the bottom and trying to build it yourself, right? And trying to have like a big hand in that. Like, I think that can be exciting too.
I think TL's the obvious, like, this is a dream scenario. You go into a team that's supposed to be amazing. They get 9th. Anything you do is an improvement, basically.
But people don't expect it. People are not going to be like, oh, if they get 8, that's really good.
It's an you just gonna say the team was boom when I got there. It was already boom. And then in the next offseason, Steve Mr. Moneybags, to your point, is about building whatever roster you want.
Comes and shakes a bag of hundreds on your head.
As long as you don't mess it up so bad in summer that he loses all faith in you, then that sack of cash is yours.
I don't think people are going to buy. Oh, you took this team, ninth place team that was in ruins before you got
You
it.
traded away my best player in Doublelift. What was I supposed to
Built them
do?
into God.
You traded them away.
I'm not buying Marks, and I think Azales is too much of a fairy tale dream anime
He wants
scenario.
to go be the guy who ruined C9. That's his legacy.
Well,
You're talking about being realistic, Mark.
You're saying I'm going to get 8th. I'm saying you're getting 8th too, but you're getting it from first. I'm getting it from 9th.
Last question here from Nikolai Stukwich. Will you ever recover from Jat's most recent abandonment?
No, my trust is broken forever. I mean, the first time was
fool
enough.
me once, shame on me. Fool me twice.
Yeah, that's an easy no.
Yeah. That's hard no. All right, that's gonna do it for the dive. You can get us out of here, Kobe.
Yeah, we gotta go. Today's super packed for us. Anyways, the LCS is still going to start up Friday. 100 Thieves versus Evil Geniuses, and a finals rematch with FlyQuest and Cloud9. Please be there. We will be. Get hyped.